right. Good day, everyone. Thanks for visiting our booth. For the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how to get to a passwordless state with Windows Hello. So it's going to be the best 20 minutes of your life. I can guarantee you. Expectations are set, right? So my name is Peter Wickleven. I'm a senior product manager working in the Windows for Commercial organization. So let's take a quick look at the agenda for the next 20 minutes. So first, let's talk about what passwordless means in general. Then we're going to talk about the strategy, how to get there very quickly, and what we've done so far, what's coming soon, and what we're working on in this slightly longer term. So first of all, what does passwordless mean to us? There are several promises that we have to make. The first one is for the end user. As soon as the end user can work on a daily basis and isn't prompted for passwords and can authenticate using a strong or alternative credential, then we kind of achieved it from an end user perspective. But it doesn't mean that we're in a better position yet, because there's also a security promise. So we have to make sure that users' credentials cannot be cracked, breached, or phished. Because as long as that's possible, we're not in a safe world. So how do we get there? So first up, we have to develop a password replacement offering. As long as we don't have anything to replace passwords with, it stops right there. So we have to make sure something is a strong password replacement. The next thing is make sure that for users, they're not prompted for passwords anymore. So it's just for example, when you log in with biometrics, with a fingerprint or facial recognition, that in your day-to-day work, for every application or your general flow, you're not bothered with password prompts. Now then, the next stage is transition to a passwordless deployment. Make sure that whatever you're using for deployment doesn't contain any passwords. And then as an end game is eliminate password from the IDP, the identity directory, or as an identity provider. Now, when do we reach which promise? If you as an end user, you can work on your device without being bothered for passwords every day, we kind of reach the end user promise. But from a security perspective, we only get there if we eliminate passwords from the identity directory. So this is it from a high level, the strategy on how to get to a passwordless world. Now let's talk about what we've done. And that fits into these specific buckets. I'll show you in a second. So what have we done so far? Well, first of all, we introduced Windows Hello. And that was with Windows 10 back in 2015. And Windows Hello is now used on over 45 million devices out there. So it's a lot. And we also have customers that deployed more than 50,000 devices in their organization. And I'm not talking about Microsoft itself, but other customers. And it's important that we have an easy-to-deploy, breach, theft, and phish-resistant way of authenticating. So, I mean, people can phish your password, but they cannot phish your bio. They cannot phish your face or fingerprint, for example. That's one thing. Now, the other thing is that once you're authenticated with Windows Hello, you will have single sign-on access to specific protected resources. I think it's always better to just show. So on my machine, I'm authenticated with my face, which automatically means it's multiple factors. I'll explain in a second what that means. So I'm going to hit enter soon, but it's important to realize I authenticated to Windows with my facial recognition, but it's two factors. Anyone know why it's two factors? It's face, and what's the other factor? Any ideas? My machine, correct, my machine. So this is the thing that makes it multi-factor. I'm enrolled on my specific device, so you need to have my device and my facial recognition, and then you're authenticated. Opposed to a password, you know, if one of you would give me your password, your corporate password, if you have domain-joined computers, I can just walk up to a random device, authenticate, and access all of your corporate data. Now, because I'm authenticated with a strong credential, I can go to office.com, for example, and I have benefit from single sign-on. I'm authenticated immediately. If I would have authenticated to Windows with a traditional password, At this point, I would be prompted for step-up credentials, like a phone call, text message, or using an authenticator app. So that's one of the hidden gems of Windows Hello, is the single sign-on benefit you get once you're in Windows. Now, we've also worked on simplifying the deployment. So initially, we came with a cloud-only way of deploying Windows Hello. We soon focused at hybrid customers who also have on-prem stuff. And later on, we got feedback from the market saying, well, there are also organizations that want to be fully on-premise. So now you can use Windows Hello, even if you're not connected to the cloud or if you're fully on-prem, you can still use Windows Hello. You can do it with either your existing PKI environment, if you invested in one, or if you didn't invest in PKI, or you're simply not willing to use it, you can use a key-based deployment. Now, we also worked on improving the end-user experience. So right now, as an end user, you can reset your PIN from the device itself, which reduces the amount of help desk calls. And the other thing, which I think is pretty cool, normally if you boot up Windows, you get the password prompt. You can now specify a policy that that password prompt is hidden. So your users will be forced to use multi-factor authentication, Windows Hello, to authenticate to the machine. So they simply do not have the option anymore to authenticate with an old-school password. We also focused at new scenarios, and I'm going to talk about that, because I think that's pretty awesome. Now, you've seen Windows Hello, you've seen demos where people have unlocked their device with either facial recognition, fingerprint, or a PIN. So that's the first unlock. But we had some feedback as well from people saying, that's great, and it works for a lot of scenarios, but I also have some concerns. For example, you're in the Starbucks or some public place, you have your device, Windows Hello set up with a PIN, so a 4-digit PIN. Now, someone could theoretically shoulder surf you, see what your PIN is, and as soon as you go to the restrooms or you go grab that coffee, they could steal your device, they know your PIN, and it's game over. They have access to all of your information. So what we added is the option to add a second unlock, which could be your phone in proximity or network location. And especially this one's cool. As soon as you pair your phone to your Windows PC, now that becomes, or if you enable a policy, now that becomes an additional factor. Let me show you with some screenshots what that looks like. So again, this scenario, I have Windows Hello configured with a PIN. I'm in a public place. I'm going to punch in my 4-digit PIN. Then Windows is going to first verify if I'm connected to my corporate network. If that's the case, I'm probably at the office, and devices in the office are more trusted. Now, in this scenario, I'm not. So Windows is going to check to see if my phone is in proximity. And in this scenario, just as an example, I disabled Bluetooth on my phone. And because of that, Windows says, well, you know, we've tried everything, but we're unable to successfully authenticate you because your phone is not in proximity. So in order to successfully authenticate here, you need 3 factors. You need possession of the physical device. It's actually the TPM chip inside of the device. You need to have the PIN. You need to know the PIN. And you need to have your phone in proximity. And once those 3 conditions are met, then we can successfully authenticate you. Doesn't that make you feel safe? So what's in the next feature update, which is coming soon? Let's talk about passwordless on Windows in S mode. And I'd like to spend a minute on FIDO2 security keys, which right now is in limited preview. So, does anyone know what Windows in S mode actually means? Yeah, few hands. So for those people who didn't hear about it, Windows in S mode is, we see it more and more often, we ship more devices in S mode, and it means you cannot run any untrusted code, or you cannot run any third-party code. Only stuff which is signed by Microsoft can be run. So this machine that I used to present from is actually in S mode. Let me quickly demo. First of all, just to show you that I'm not lying. Of course, I would never do that. Here you can see this is an Enterprise Insider preview in S mode. So I cannot execute any third-party code. Just to show you, I downloaded a random executable. It's not really malware. It's just an executable. It doesn't matter what you download. And as soon as you try to start it, I get this pop-up saying, well, not on this device. Whatever it is, we don't trust it. So you either have to get something which is signed by Microsoft or something from the store that's also signed by Microsoft. So this makes me feel a lot safer because malware is pretty much incapable of running on this device. Now, you can get out of Windows 10 and S, but if you leave it in this way, you'll get some additional benefits. So typically, if you work on a Windows 10 device, you will be prompted for a password several times. First of all, during the installation, during the out-of-box experience, I'm sure you've seen it, the blue screens, you go through it. At some point, you have to make the decision whether you're a home user or an enterprise. Regardless of what you choose, one of the next questions will be, what's your username, what's your password? And it kind of stops right there because we don't want to have a password. So what you can do now is, during the out-of-box experience, use the Microsoft Authenticator app. So instead of using a username and password, you use this app. So that's the first thing that we kind of made sure. Install Windows without using a password. Now the second thing is during Windows Logon. During Windows Logon, you're also prompted for credentials. Unless you're in Windows 10 in S mode. Let me show you. Let's see if this actually works. Just a second. I hope I can demo it. Yep. So if I hide my camera and I look at sign-in options, I got 3 options. A security key, we'll talk about that soon, what it is. I can enter my PIN, or I have my facial recognition. But where's the password? There simply is no password option to authenticate to Windows, because we don't want to have that, and there's no need for it. So that's the second improvement. So first you can install Windows without a password. You can authenticate. Well, you have to authenticate to something stronger than a password in order to get into Windows. So let's switch back to facial recognition. Here we are. And the last thing is just in Windows setting. No matter where you'll go in this Windows instance, into settings or control panel, there's no option to change your password or reset your password because I simply don't have one. Well, theoretically I have one, but I'm not using it. Oh. Now let's talk about, and we demoed this already, let's talk about FIDO2 security keys. Who heard about FIDO? Okay. So FIDO2, or FIDO, is an alliance of over 250 organizations. It's growing, and our shared goal is to get rid of passwords and replace it with something more secure and just as easy to use. Now what we'll have is FIDO2 security keys, or FIDO is about to release a FIDO2 specification, which allows so-called security keys to be used for authentication. And I'll explain in a second what that means. Windows Hello is great if you have a one-to-one relationship or mapping between the user and its device. So I'm sure all of you own your own device. And if you're running Windows 10, you can use Windows Hello. In the morning, you open up your device, you either scan your finger, you're recognized by the facial recognition, or you punch in your 4-digit PIN, and you're authenticated. And that's great. And you've registered for Windows Hello in advance, the first time we started using the device, and it all works great. So that's good. Keep on using that. But what about shared devices? So think about maybe a classroom where students roam across every hour. Or maybe in healthcare, where a doctor needs to access a patient's record or a patient's file, depending on where the patient happens to be in the building. So you cannot ask every doctor to go to all devices belonging to their organization and pre-register in Windows Hello. It simply doesn't scale, and Windows Hello isn't designed for that purpose. So that's why now you can carry your identity with you on a security key. I brought a few. So what I have here in my hands, I actually have, I think I have it here as well. So one of the keys that I brought is this YubiKey FIDO2 compliant key. And my identity is stored on this device. So now I can walk up to any device which is Azure AD joined to my organization's tenant. I can plug it in, and depending on the capabilities of this key, I either have to punch in a 4-digit code, or, and I brought another one, which is a Phytion key. This one has an embedded fingerprint sensor. And now I can touch this one, and then it kind of releases my credentials, and I'm authenticated to Windows with Windows Hello. Let me quickly show you how that works. Okay, it's this one. Thank you. So what we have here is a Windows 10 device on the latest build. And just imagine that I've never seen this device before in my life. So it's a shared device somewhere located in my organization's building, but I didn't pre-register with Windows Hello. I did, however, got one of these keys from my system administrator, and I only enrolled once while getting this key. Now I can just pop it in. So I'll insert this one. This one has the embedded fingerprint reader. And Windows Hello will prompt me to take action on my security key. So I'll just touch it. And my device is offline. That's always great. So that's why it's not working. Let me quickly connect internet to it. So now it should work. Take action. Let's try it again. Let's try the other key. I'm going to punch in my 4-digit code on this one. And I'm authenticated. So the great benefit of this is the same with Windows Hello. You'll get single sign-on access to resources that are protected with what we call conditional access. So if I go to, let's say, office.com, I hit sign in, and I'm just authenticated directly. Again, because I'm authenticated with a strong credential, multi-factor, I get seamless single sign-on. So depending on the form factor of the key, this YubiKey I configured with a 4-digit PIN. The Phytion key has my fingerprint enrolled. So depending on which key I use, I either enter the PIN or I just touch it and I'm authenticated. So what's coming next? Another part of the FIDO2 specification is so-called WebAuthn support. And on this Friday, this is just a shameless plug for a very cool session that we have on Friday. And together with Google, we're going to talk about replacing passwords with FIDO2 authentication. We're going to do a really cool demo. Knock Knock Labs is involved as well. So make sure you're there Friday. Make sure you stick along, because this is worth your time. So what is it you can do today? Just to wrap up. If you want to deploy a password alternative, deploy or consider deploying Windows Hello for Business. Take a look at FIDO security keys. Right now it's in a limited preview. If you go online, if you search for the Windows for Business blog, this morning at 9 a.m. and at 10 a.m. we published 2 blogs that also contains a link where you can be entered to be whitelisted or put on a wait list to actually test this specific feature. Also use the Authenticator app. As soon as you use that, you can install Windows without having to punch in credentials. Second thing, and this is probably the most difficult one, make sure you identify and phase out legacy workflows, or at least upgrade your line of business app and web applications. As soon as you federate them or you use modern authentication protocols like Azure Active Directory Authentication Library, you'll get benefits from single sign-on with Windows Hello. And I'm sure this is the difficult one. We can solve the operating system, but then, of course, all the apps that run on top of it, they need to be passwordless as well. And that's the next journey that we all have to take together. Try out Windows 10 and S mode. As soon as you use that, you can use it without using any password whatsoever on Windows. And this is a nice thing you could try next. As soon as you deployed all the other steps, if you've done all the other steps, push out that policy and hide the credential provider. So that means when you start Windows, there is no way to punch in a password, because that's simply not allowed anymore. That's a bit of the end game from an end user perspective. Now, I'll leave you with a bit of a cliffhanger. Eliminate password from the identity directory. Stay tuned, because we have lots more coming. Just to wrap up, some useful links. Sign up for the Windows Insider program to try Windows in S mode. 3 links if you want to have more information about how to deploy Windows for business, because we got different deployment options, cloud only, hybrid, on-premise. You can use PKI, you can use key-based deployments depending on your needs. With that, I'd like to invite you to spend 3 minutes of your life to enter a survey. You'll be getting a nice blanket, which will keep you warm and secure. Thank you very much.